Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
We are doctors
and weight management and metabolic health experts.
And this is the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast.
Good morning, gorgeous friend. How are you this morning? Dr. Lucy here. I am without my pal, Dr. Mary, but I have a fabulous guest instead, who I think you will love because she brings a wealth of knowledge to, not just women's health, but health, life, lifespan. Brilliant. She's so engaging. I can't wait for you to hear her chat. Her name is Clio Austin. She's a brilliant exercise physiologist, and we're going to be talking all things bone, muscle, and beyond. Welcome, Clio. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm a bit chuffed. Thanks for the wonderful introduction.
Oh, you are welcome. You are welcome. So you are a health professional and work with women around, women in midlife and beyond, I'm imagining. And I thought we might start by just perhaps a little bit of background and how you got into that space and how you find it.
Yeah. So I am an exercise physiologist and scientist. And what that means is I am a university qualified allied health practitioner, basically. I studied a long, long time ago, and my introduction to the allied health space was in occupational injury management. And I also hold a master's in occupational injury management. So I've been doing that for a very long time. I'm going to say 20 years plus.
Yeah.
And I had been working in that space up until recently, but also in and out of clinical work. So working with people with chronic disease as well. Whilst I had young children in and out of sort of full-time employment, I was doing some clinical work as well. And so a couple of years ago, I was in my early 40s, so I'm 44 now, but I'll say that I started noticing changes within myself, classic entering into perimenopause that I now recognize. And I wasn't quite feeling like myself. And so I started researching what was going on with me. Because of my aversion to reading journal articles, and I quickly discovered through my research that I was going through perimenopause potentially. I had all the sort of classic signs. So I realized also that there wasn't enough support for women around the perimenopause and menopause transition in terms of, I guess, exercise prescription, using exercise as medicine. And I found that very odd because I thought, wow, there's so much evidence to suggest that this is a really critical time of our lives to be starting to invest in our health if we hadn't already started down that path in our 30s. And the more I spoke to other women, the more I realized that they had actually no idea that they needed to start down an early prevention path to avoid all the flow-on effect of the menopause transition, including chronic disease, insulin resistance, osteopenia, osteoporosis, increased risk of heart disease, all these things that become more prevalent as we go through the menopause transition. And also a lot of women were still trying to exercise and eat the same way that they were doing in their 20s and 30s. And it was either no plan at all, no clear direction on how to exercise. So it was just a bit of ad hoc exercise or walking, or they were doing excessive cardio and under-eating because they were starting to notice that they were putting on belly fat, increasing in weight, and they weren't sure why. So they started depriving and over-exercising. And that's just not what science was telling us that was the right thing. So that's when I actually decided to take a pretty drastic career change. And I dropped out of full-time employment I was working in occupational rehabilitation in mining. And I dropped down to part-time employment in occupational rehabilitation to open up my own women's health clinic. And so I operate a couple of days a week out of a clinic here in Brisbane. And I also run an online telehealth program to be able to reach women who don't have access and who need it. And so, yeah, that was my change of direction. And so really what I specialize in or what I really enjoy is working with women through the menopause transition. So that's a bit of my backstory.
Oh, fantastic. And I love the way you encapsulated then all of the things that happen during the menopause or the risks that are increased. Because I think the thing that I also like to, I guess, just remind people of is that menopause is permanent. So when people go, oh, no, I'm all over and done with that, I'm thinking, you might be over and done with the hot flushes, but all the rest of the stuff, the risk of cardiovascular disease, the increased risk of osteopenia, osteoporosis, that's all still there. That's just chugging along in the background there. And I love the way you framed that menopause can be, or the transition can be, the time to kind of take stock and like a little wake-up call to start looking after yourself again. And I think it's really interesting because women will often do that in pregnancy or pre-pregnancy. They're all into the pregnancy. They're buying the pregnancy books. They start getting themselves healthy, going to the gym, and then they're pregnant. They're doing pregnant classes and water aerobics and whatever. And then, we don't do any of that in the menopause time. So, yes, reframing it as an opportunity to go, right, yep, this is a phase in my life. And it's time for me to do something. So it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Great. So with your work with women then, like what do you specifically do?
Yeah. So I would normally have an initial consultation where I take a really detailed history, much like yourself. You need to know who the woman in front of you is, where they've come from, what their medical history is, maybe what their family situation is like, because honestly, that whilst I'm not going to call family a barrier, but family a barrier to exercise is what I mean. But the personal life situation going on around a woman is super important because it informs the amount of time that they're going to be able to commit to themselves, to exercising, what stresses they have going on in their lives. So I really take a comprehensive history of the woman, lifestyle, risk factors, any medical information they might have collected or been sent along with from their doctor. Sometimes we have care plans from the doctors, so chronic disease care plans, or other times I have women seek me out independently because they've done their own research. And this is what I love about the generation of women who are going through the menopause transition right now, that we're so educated and we're so self-empowered, and we go and we learn this information for ourselves, and then we seek out the treatment that we need. So I love that about a lot of the women who see me. So we'll do that. We'll come up with a plan that suits the woman sitting in front of me. So we meet you where you're at. What is it that fits into your lifestyle, that is realistic and that your body can handle right now? And I'm also super mindful, and look, call it practice and error from previous years, of not overloading the program, because a lot of people don't have a huge exercise background. A lot of people maybe played sports at school, engaged in a little bit of activity, maybe did a few boxing classes, did CrossFit once upon a time, did a lot of walking, so not everyone comes to me who is already doing some formal type of exercise. A lot of people aren't doing any formal exercise. So meet you where you're at, start a program that fits into your lifestyle, and we start small. What I like to do is educate on, okay, here's where we're at now, here's where we want to be, and here are the little building blocks to getting to that point, because I'm not going to give you all these things at once. You're just going to throw it out the window and go, this is too hard. There's got to be an easier way, and there isn't, unfortunately. Exercise has to be, you have to work. Sometimes you have to work up a sweat, not too much sometimes, but it's work that you actually have to do if you want to make a difference to your body composition. So we meet the person where they're at. We do little building blocks. My priority is to get people into strength training, even if it's from the comfort of your own home and you're doing body weight exercises, you're doing 10, 15 minutes every couple of days, right? We've mastered that. Maybe now we can start to build in some more exercise. Let's get out and walk for 10 minutes twice a day and just get a bit of movement. It really depends on where the person is at that point in time. It's all about, at this time of our lives, it's all about building muscle, maintaining muscle. Building bone, maintaining bone. Balance, mobility. Yes, we want to get some huffy-puffy in to improve our cardiovascular health, but it does not mean we have to be doing hours and hours of cardio exercise on a machine or walking for hours and hours. I'm a big advocate for get your steps. If you love walking, walk all day. Walking is super important. Getting steps in is super important, but that's also an incidental activity as well. We need to have a structured strength training program. And luckily for us, it kills two birds with one stone, because strength training will improve muscle and it'll improve bone density. So those two things together, well, we can tick that off with this one squat that we're doing, with this one push-up that we're doing or chest press that we're doing, right? So the way that happens is when we lift a load or carry a weight, it puts a stimulus on our muscles, but it also puts a stimulus on our bones. So we want to grow and get stronger. Now, I will say that at this point, some women may be freaking out going, I don't want to lift weights because I'm going to get big and bulky. It is absolutely impossible unless you're working out for a bodybuilding competition and you're eating tons and tons of calories. You will not get big and bulky. In fact, try as I might, I lift heavy weights and eat all the protein, and I still find it hard to build muscle at 44. It is very difficult. Now, I'm not saying this to discourage, because yes, you will build muscle, but you also won't get big and bulky. So please, if you're thinking that right now, put that out of your mind. It is virtually impossible for that to happen.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think it's tricky because the fear of being big and bulky is, you know, for people of so my generation, so I'm in my 50s, because of, you know, diet culture in the skinny 90s where we all needed to look like we had cancer. And now, sadly, it's coming back in that little phase. But, you know, you don't need to shrink yourself to be acceptable. And what we really have seen then is that a lot of those very thin girls and thin women now have osteoporosis and osteopenia because they didn't build bone in their teens and 20s. So, you know, out there to all the mums of who are my age, if you've got girls that are, you know, in their teens and 20s, get them building muscle, eating yogurt, you know, scoffing cheese, all of that.
Absolutely. I've got a 13-year-old daughter, so I am very acutely aware of what's going on in the culture at the moment. Yeah. And I will say that for a very long time in my 20s, I was chasing the skinny. Yeah, I was in the tail end of that skinny culture for sure. At high school, I starved myself. I didn't eat. I fractured when I was in my late teens. When I was 19, I had a stress fracture. That's not normal. I didn't have a traumatic incident. It was under-eating, over-exercising, poor bone density. I know now that that's probably what it was. Did I ever get a scan? Did anybody ever tell me that that's what I should do? No. But I am putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, trying to figure out why at that age I fractured. And I was undernourished and over-exercising. And that's probably the likely cause. So it happens in younger women.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the whole thing, isn't it? That we became scared of food, and food became the enemy because it made us fat. And, now we've still got, difficult relationships with food. And, food is I just think of it now as nourishment, and it's nurturing, and it's all of the goodness that our body needs to be able to thrive and do all the things that it needs to do. Clio, I'm really interested in your thoughts around, and I might be putting you on the spot here, personal trainers and because what I'm seeing a lot, and again, maybe my algorithm is slightly skewed, although I suspect not, but I see a lot of PTs that are on Instagram and they're banging on about calorie deficits. And the only way to lose body fat is to be in a calorie deficit. And they're showing people that you can eat whatever you like as long as you're in a calorie deficit. And that a Snickers has 260 calories, which is the same as this little thimble of olive oil. So, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I love that because I used to do natural bodybuilding. So I did in my mid-30s. How old was my baby? My son was 10 months old when I did my first bodybuilding competition. And so I was right in that culture of the calorie deficit. We did it in a safe, controlled way, but certainly for a short period of time, calorie deficit can help bring down body fat, but it is not a sustainable thing for most people. And certainly people in the bodybuilding circuit aren't like that 12 months out of the year, right? It's not a sustainable thing. It's for a short period. And it can impact your energy levels, and it does impact your hormones. Think of it as relative energy deficiency, with young female athletes, for example, who are under-eating, over-exercising. Their hormones are disrupted, their periods stop. It has a huge impact on your hormonal health, for starters. You're not potentially getting the right nutrients. In bodybuilding, I say it's controlled because you are watching your protein portions and so on. But it has its place, and it's usually in that type of competitive sport. I think as a short-term intervention, it might be an appropriate thing to do, but that would be something that I would suggest somebody seeing a dietitian for and getting a really clear, structured plan. But for women in the menopause transition, it's not super helpful because our bodies now are in a catabolic state. What that means is that our body is breaking itself down. It's breaking down muscle. It's breaking down bone. We stop feeding it with the right nutrients. And usually if we're in a calorie deficit and we don't have a good education on what sort of nutrients to have, we're going to be depleting our muscle and we're going to be depleting our bone. With muscle, when we start, and the reason why we're losing muscle, and I'm saying this because I'm explaining it to your listeners, I know you're acutely aware, is
that's okay.
As our estrogen starts to decline, it is harder for us to build and maintain muscle. We have sarcopenia, which is the breakdown of muscle, osteopenia, osteoporosis, breakdown of bone. Now, if the more muscle we're losing, I guess we're in a more insulin-resistant state. So if we're not feeding our body with the right building blocks to build and maintain muscle, we become less metabolically active. So our body's not churning away at this energy because we've got these beautiful muscles burning away at the energy. And so what happens when we don't have that lovely muscle is we start to store body fat, and particularly around the midline for women in this time of life. So if we're in this constantly underfed state, which is what this calorie restriction essentially is, it's actually working against the menopausal body, not with it. In saying that, I'm not suggesting that we have, 2,000 calories and it can be whatever we want. It still has to be the right kind of food that is supporting the body, that is building muscle, that is building bone, not that is working against us. And inflammatory foods, right? Like your junk foods.
Well, the way I look at it is I think that the selling, if you like, of the calorie deficit message is just low fat rebranded. Because the easiest way to reduce calories is to reduce the amount of fat in the diet. But we actually need fats. We need healthy fats. We need olive oil. We need avocados. They provide nutrients for all sorts of things. All of our fat-soluble vitamins, they're really important. And so, like everything, you can have too much of a good thing, too much fat, you have too much sugar, you can have too much of anything, you have too much air. It's all about the Goldilocks. But this obsession with calorie deficits, and then people suggesting that when weight loss stalls, you just need a bigger deficit, and it's like, it's really tempting. And I think that you nailed it when you said, yes, it's a short-term solution. So, it's tempting and it's short-term, but it's not usually a road to long-term sustainable health and, weight loss coming along for the ride.
No, absolutely. And I know a lot of my dietitian friends who I work in close circles with in the menopause space are all about the nutrient-dense foods. You're eating food that supports your health, that makes you feel good. And not a lot of them are big supporters of super-duper long-term calorie restriction. So, I really encourage women to think hard before they start down this slippery slope of calorie deficit. Think hard about how sustainable that is, how that's going to fit into the rest of your family life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like the women that come and see you too also value your expertise as a university trained health specialist compared to maybe someone who's done, they may have worked in the fitness industry for a long time, but they've, originally started with a 6-week course and, they're not always.
Look, I think it's getting better. I'm constantly surprised by some of the things I see personal trainers, I will say, who I see in the gym. A lot of them are coaching on pelvic floor health. This is mostly the women. And I think that's fantastic because that's not something that used to be part of the training. So there's a better focus on women's health. But the difference is that we specialize in chronic disease management to an extent as well. I mean, that is my background in terms of clinical practice. And so most women, I'm going to say 99% of the women I see come to me with all sorts of problems. Your typical shoulder, frozen shoulder, bursitis, hip bursitis, lateral hip pain, knee problems, osteoarthritis, insulin resistance, you name it. There is a long medical history. So that's the beauty of what we do, is that we can look at the whole picture and manage the whole person in front of us. You're not just an exercise program to me. We're looking at improving your health in the long term and doing it in a way that's sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. And, all the itises that you mentioned, we know when, the minute estrogen disappears, has such a powerful effect on our collagen and our muscles as well. And so, inflammation, and it's a potent anti-inflammatory. So certainly that is a peak period for women that never had plantar fasciitis. Suddenly they've got it. And it's like, oh, really? What's going on here? And I think 5, 6, 8 years ago, I used to see lots of women with tendinopathies and I'd be sending them off to the exercise physiologist for, strength training and rebalancing and reactivating, muscles that are no longer firing and doing all that stuff. And it never occurred to me that it was anything to do with menopause. I just thought, God, so many people I should have been more onto. But anyway.
Yeah. Do you know what a breakthrough for me? I don't know if you were there, but I went to the So Hot Right Now.
Yes.
Yeah, I went to the medical conference there and I got to meet Vonda, Dr. Vonda Wright, and a few of the other docs there. But, I'm a big fan of Dr. Vonda Wright, and it really clicked for me when I read that journal article about the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause. It clicked for me because I'd been working in occupational rehabilitation, workers' compensation, and a lot of the time seeing women with shoulder injuries, other aches and pains. Sometimes women were diagnosed with fibromyalgia, all sorts of things. And it didn't click for me why this was such a typical injury or condition that a midlife woman might develop until I read this journal article that shows the clear link of loss of estrogen to the inflammation of our joints and aches and pains in the body. And yeah, it blew my mind, and it made such a strong connection for what I was seeing in workplaces as well and things that women were struggling with. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think the, brilliant thing about MHT is that now what it means is that when women have less pain, they can actually do the exercise that they may have been thinking about doing, but every time everything aches and they feel about 100. And so when we prescribe it, people feel better and therefore can implement the plan that someone like you's created for them.
Yeah. And I always talk to my clients about, where are you on your menopause journey? Have you got have you got your MHT? If not, why not? Not that it's for me to, sway either way or not, but to understand why they've made that decision so that I can support them where they are on their sort of menopause journey in terms of, their capacity to be able to exercise if they're experiencing these symptoms.
100%. And I always show women there's a British Menopause Society graphic, which has got little ladies on it. And it's a risk factors, the pros and cons and the breast cancer risk. And the thing that reduces breast cancer risk is exercise. And it reduces it by miles. So it's significant improvement. So if taking MHT, and there is a slight increased risk, but it's much, it's much smaller than than I got taught, that's for sure. And then it's offset completely by the fact that you can actually exercise. So you go, so it's like a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So that sounds fantastic. So Clio, if people wanted to connect with you, how do they find you?
Sure. I am on Instagram. I'm at menopause_exercise phys. If you look up Clio with an I, CLIO, Austin, you will find me as well. I am online. I've got a website, clioaustin.com.au.
Great.
So that's how people can connect with me. If anyone wants to reach out, you can just send me a DM in Instagram. You can connect with me through my website. Yeah, and I'm passionate about making this service accessible to all women in Australia, including women who live rurally who don't have this access. And so that's why I run a telehealth program. So that service is available to all women, because I don't think any woman should have to go without the ability or the education on how to build muscle, build bone density, and improve their health outcomes, mitigate chronic disease development, and prevent frailty.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It's wonderful. And I think the brilliant thing about telehealth, I mean, it's the one good thing that's come out of COVID is that we're much more familiar with Zoom and with telehealth is that, and it doesn't even have to be rural women. It might be women that just, don't want to go to a gym, like they're traumatized from.
I see plenty of women who live in my local town and here in Brisbane who just don't want to leave the comfort of their own home. And you know what? It's convenient. I see my menopause doctor virtually and I love it.
Oh, absolutely. I reckon I do because, we have our telehealth clinic as well. And I reckon about 60% of people are in their car. They're not driving, but they're in their car because it's easy. You can just duck out into your car at work. I call it your mobile office. And yeah, it's so convenient. You don't have to take half a day off work and sit in a waiting room. Like, it's great. So yeah, no, we are lucky with the new softwares that have come about. Wonderful. All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for imparting your knowledge. I'm sure you have, inspired some women to, just think about muscle, think about, movement. How can you move your body? How can you start small? And if you need any help with it, well, we've got our friend Clio to help us out.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, lovelies. Bye for now. The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualized medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.